Alright guys, today I'm doing a video that I've actually wanted to do for a while, but I wanted to get these machines up and running the way I wanted them to be running, and they are. So I have, you guys can't see it right here, but I have a 16-inch MacBook Pro that I bought in November, December of last year, but it's still the current. They haven't updated it. This is the 16-inch MacBook that you and I would go out and spend money on right now, as well as I have a 2020 iMac, and this is the i7 version. So it's kind of the highest level of the ones that you and I can kind of buy in the store. So I wanted to put these two machines up against each other so that you guys can make a better decision if you are looking at which computer should I buy? So some of the bigger questions, maybe should I buy a Mac at all right now with the possibility of a Apple silicone based Mac coming out? And that's really hard for me to answer because it really depends on your needs. Because if you need a computer right now, buying one of these current generations is going to be fantastic. If you don't, then maybe you want to wait. And I get that, because if I didn't need a new machine, would I have waited? Possibly. The other thing to kind of realize too is what you need your Mac for. So do you need a Mac that has some abilities to run possibly some Windows software? That can be a big one. And if you do, then you definitely want something that has that Intel chip in it. I, for one, on my MacBook, actually run Parallels so that I have Windows on it, because there is one or two pieces of software that I use that requires Windows, and I can actually just boot into Windows, do what I need, fire back into the Mac system, and I'm good to go. Could I do that with an Apple Silicon? As of this point, I don't know. It may be something that they design, but I have my doubts. So that could be a real big one too. But today's video primarily is in performance between the 16-inch MacBook Pro and the money that you would spend versus the 2020 iMac 27-inch, and this is the i7. So we're not doing much customization on this one, except for a few pieces that you may do at home. So which machine should you buy? Okay, my friends, so here's the two machines. Again, the Mac is here. Here's a screenshot of it so you can see that it's running. And I want to kind of talk about the machines that I bought and the money. So I actually, this machine here, the MacBook Pro that I have, 2.3 gigahertz, it's this one right here, 1 terabyte, AMD Radeon. If I select this, you will see that I actually did a couple upgrades, and I want you guys to see the price. So these, I've actually done the upgrades here already. Base price was $3,500. Now this is Canadian, so for those of you in the UK or the US or wherever you are, of course that dollar is going to be different, but this is here in Canada. So it was $3,500 base. So I actually wanted the i9 processor for sure, so that was good. We got just the base i9, and that's why I went up here, because I wanted my MacBook to be as fast as possible. The big upgrade for me is I wanted 32 gigs. Now that's a huge one with the Mac, because whatever you buy is whatever you're going to get, and you can't upgrade that later. So you have to make that decision now. And as a lot of us know, Apple memory isn't really very inexpensive. So it was about a $500 Canadian upgrade. But I wanted 32, would have loved to have gone to 64, but I didn't want to drop $1,000. So 32 gigs is where it sits. Graphics I updated as well, because for the extra $100, I figured getting a little bit more memory in there was going to be useful. And that is very true for those of us that are doing any kind of video editing, especially photography, anything that we could be dealing with large files. This video memory is going to be really huge. And I did notice that especially on the iMac. And it may have been something that I kind of wish that I would have looked at, but I didn't. But we'll talk about that again later. And that was kind of it. The rest of it was pretty much right out of the box. So the big upgrades on my MacBook Pro 16-inch was the actual video card and the physical memory. So if you come up here and look at my About This Mac, you will actually see here 2.3 gigahertz, 8-core i9, 32 gigs. And it's showing the Intel card now. But of course it'll switch to that dedicated graphics card when it gets into doing anything specific. So the big thing here is to look at that price point, right? So that price came in before taxes, $4,124. So not a little bit of money. This is an expensive machine. So let's go to the actual iMac right now. We'll look at the same kind of specs. So this is the iMac right here, and I ended up going with this machine. So this is the 3.8 gigahertz 8-core i7. So it's not even an i9. I went with the i7, figured that would be fine. Because I spent so much on the MacBook, I really was thinking I was going to buy the iMac because I wanted something with a big screen and something that if the MacBook decided to fail for whatever reason, I had a backup. So this was kind of, I'm like, it'll be fine. It'll do. I didn't really do anything to this machine. And if you kind of go into here, customizing, you can look at it. I got standard glass. I went with just the i7, so I didn't change the actual processor. 8 gigs of RAM. Now this is huge. I didn't do any change in memory here because I bought my RAM third party. So I actually bought this RAM right here. Maybe it'll focus. I don't know. This guy right here. And I bought, first off, I just bought two 16s to fill up the empty slots because in this version of the iMac, the 27, you and I can change memory. Now again, this is another bonus because when the new ones come out, whenever they come out, a lot of speculation is that ability to add your own memory, they may take it away. So that was huge because that's a big money saver. So I ended up putting in 32 gigs additional, running at 40. Now the issue with that is that your clock speed drops down a little bit, and a lot of the features of memory, when you're not running the same memory across all 4 of the banks, slows down. So I ran 40, which was great, but as of today, I'm actually running, and I'll bring this hopefully up here. You may be able to see this about this Mac, right? 3.8 gigahertz, 8-core i7, 64 gigs of RAM. Oh yeah, 64 gigs of RAM. Okay, and the 5500 XT 8 gig. So very cool. So the machine that I bought, really no upgrades. Now the only thing that could have been a good upgrade if I had the money at the time was actually this one. So going up to that faster card with the more RAM can be huge. Hard drive, I didn't do anything really to it. It's the standard 512 because of the fact that I run primarily externals, because I like to use these as editing machines, which means that if I write to an external and I decide I want to go somewhere else or work from somewhere or go see a client, I just take the SSD with me and I can bring my MacBook and I'm good to go. So $3,079. Now be aware, if I would have actually added that 64 gigs here, I would have added $1,250, which would have put me up above the actual MacBook. But the bonus is I could buy my own memory. So I bought 64 gigs of RAM, which cost me just over $300 Canadian. Way better. And I have a spare 8 gigs sitting right here because this is the original memory. So I'll just tuck it away just in case something happens with the RAM that I have now. So that seems like a better deal. So bang for a buck. This actually cheaper. So you get this system here cheaper, which is kind of nice. Now let's talk about ports. MacBook Pro, of course, 4 USB-C ports and headphone jack. So a lot of people like the fact that you get all these USB-C ports. Some people don't because you end up having to run with all kinds of adapters when you and I want to run USB-A ports or anything else. I don't mind it, but there is some people that don't, and that's really up to you. USB-C is really where everything is going, but it may take some time for us to acquire new cables and et cetera, et cetera. For instance, if you bought a new tablet or something, will it come with a USB-A cable? Yeah, so how do you plug that in? I don't know. You have to get an adapter. The iMac comes with 4 USB-As, 2 USB-Cs, your headphone jack, an Ethernet port. It's ready to go. So you can plug everything in, boom. Nothing really needed extra. So that's huge. Plus you get this beautiful 27-inch display, which is fantastic. And you'll notice I have an external monitor plugged into the back, which is great. Not that I couldn't plug one in here. I could as well. But this is a lovely system. Now let's talk about performance. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to close this and we're simply going to run one piece of software just to kind of show this because I don't want this video to be crazy long. One piece of software. So we're going to come here and we're going to run Geekbench. All right, I'm going to bring it up here on my MacBook. We're also going to close this. Now, just realize that these machines are screen recording, so their performance is going to drop a little bit, but it'll give you an idea as to how fast these machines can possibly run. First off, we're going to do what's called a compute. So this is really designed around your graphics card. So we'll go to compute on both of these, and we're going to do OpenCL on both. Yep. You can see here AMD Radeon Pro 5500 XT. This is the AMD Radeon Pro 5500. Run compute on both, and we're off. So I'll kind of skip forward, just fast forward this stuff for you so you don't have to sit and wait, but you'll see the results that should come up right away. Okay, so this was no real surprise that the iMac was surpassing it in performance. We're looking at 43,000 on the OpenCL score versus 32,000. But that's a fairly big increase. Both 5500 cards, but of course the iMac is running an XT version, I believe. So it's a little quicker right out of the gate. And that's running OpenCL. If we do the exact same thing, we'll close these again, because we might as well be thorough. We'll actually change these to Metal. So it's running the Metal version of this, and we will do exactly the same thing. Start running these. Again, we'll just fast forward for you guys. But we should see, I would think, very similar performance differences between the MacBook Pro and the iMac. So timing-wise, this one finished considerably faster, and you're looking at almost 44,000 versus 42,000. So we actually, with Metal, got a little bit of a bigger difference between the two. So the actual iMac video card, again, was even faster running Metal. So we're seeing that performance increase on the iMac one last time. Last one that we're going to do for this is we're going to go to the actual CPU. Now this is putting a 9th generation i9, which is in the MacBook Pro, versus a 10th generation i7. Okay, now processor wise, this is a 2.3 gigahertz versus a 3.8 gigahertz. So processor speed considerably faster, i9 versus i7. So let's do that exact same thing. We're going to run that CPU. You can see all the specs on the screen, right? And go. Again, we're going to fast forward for you guys so you don't have to sit through all this. Now, I don't know if you guys can hear this right here if you listen. And that's actually the iMac fans kicking in, because it's working so hard right now. But, and that's something to kind of, while this is finishing, the MacBook still going, there's something to realize. A lot of people were curious, I guess, to why the actual iMac kept the shape and design that it's had for the last 8-9 years. And I think it's because if they made the iMac any smaller or thinner or changed that feel of it, it just wouldn't have the ability to cool itself. And that's a big issue we see with the MacBook Pro. That i9 processor is really quite hot, and it is an issue. So the cooling on here, this machine runs hot. It does with an i9. If I were to buy it again, I'd almost go with the i7 just because of the fact that I'd like to see the machine run a little cooler versus getting that little bit of performance upgrade. Here though, because of the way it's built, I think that's why they kept this shape, just to help with cooling. Because the fans kick in, but it actually dissipates pretty fast, especially once the machine isn't working hard anymore. So just kind of be aware of it. You probably heard that fan kick in. But look at the performance, right? You're looking at 1209 for single core and about 8,000 for multi-core. Here, 1,000 for single core versus just under 6,000 for multi-core. So there's big differences here. If I were to buy a machine strictly for like video editing and things like that, and portability, this is a big one, and portability was not part of the equation, I was going to be sitting at a desk and using this. This would be the machine. This would be the machine I would use. If I only had one machine and portability was really important or was going to possibly be part of my workflow, then you have to go with like a MacBook Pro, because this is the machine that's going to give you the utmost power and speed and abilities, and you can sit at a cafe or edit in the car, which I've done while I'm waiting for my daughter at her like dentist appointment. You know, so that's really important. Now, if you're only buying a MacBook for the occasional usage, like you're going to have it for when you're traveling, or you're going to have it for doing emails and stuff like that. For one, maybe you can do that stuff from your phone. But two, what I would even consider is buying like an iMac for home, you know, spending this kind of money, like that $3,000. And even with that additional RAM that I put in there, you're only looking at about 35-ish. And then taking that extra $1,000 and buying a base MacBook Air or something like that. You know, spend a little bit more, but now you got that portability and this. Because for editing, especially in photo editing and all that kind of stuff, having this big screen, fantastic. Having all the additional ports that you have in the back, fantastic. Knowing that you can buy just about whatever and plug it in and you're good, not realizing that you need some kind of adapter. The performance out of this machine, and I say but the i7, especially with 64 gigs of RAM, it's actually just as fast or faster than what the iMac Pro was, which is a machine that you can still buy now and drop like $7,000 Canadian into it. And you're getting that kind of performance out of this machine. So that's fantastic. But it's not portable. So you kind of have to take one with the other and kind of figure out which is more important to you. If I were buying again and only had one machine, I'd probably still end up buying the MacBook, because I do like to have that portability and I do edit pretty much for a living. So this would do all that editing a little slower than this, but it's portable. This, though, if you're a home user, go this route. I think this machine is smoking fast. All right, guys, I'm gonna leave it there. This is a 2020 27-inch iMac i7 with 64 gigs of RAM versus the 2019, but the same as the 2020 MacBook Pro 16-inch i9 with 32 gigs of RAM. What would you buy? Leave comments down below. Hopefully this video helped you guys out, gave you an idea of the performance differences and some of the price differences, and the ability for us to do a little bit of customizing, especially with memory, which is huge, versus having to buy everything for the MacBook during that build when we're actually ordering this machine. Makes the iMac look even better. All right, guys, I'm going to leave it there. Like, comment, share, subscribe. And if you have any questions about either of these two machines, let me know in the comments. And we'll see you guys next video. All right, my friends. Later. Oh, yeah. For those that stuck around, I totally forgot to explain to you why I thought video memory was important. And I wanted to put up this screenshot right here. I'm currently importing footage into Final Cut from this video that you just watched. And if you come up here to like the CPU in that on my iStat under here, a few things to look at. First off, CPU is not doing a lot, okay, during import or whatever. System memory, not doing much at all, which is fine. But if you come down here and look at the video card memory is just completely full. Processor, almost completely full. You know, so that's memory. Look at it up there. It's just peaked right out while it's importing. And this happens whenever, especially in something like Final Cut, that transcoding has to happen, or re-encoding or exporting or anything like that. It really just racks up these two. So, and you'll see my CPU not really being used very much at all. So this is really important, I think, for those of us that are doing a lot of work. If you have some extra money to invest, system RAM is never a bad thing, but it can be done later if you need to. But this would have been a pretty good purchase, I think, to upgrade, because we just can't do anything with this now. It is what it is, and if this machine needs to last me 3, 4, 5 years, I can't change this. So down the road there may be some external GPUs that I can look into, but it would have been a better investment, I think, to get this right when ordered. Anyways, that's it. I'm out. Later.